Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're working on a Tekota. It's the 500C line counter. It's made by Shimano. This one's a beautiful reel. It's nice. It has the traditional Tekota would have the line guide, but not necessarily the line counter. And those line counters are used to let you know how far out you have the line, what zone you're in. And if you hook up, you want to just pay attention to where you are on the numbers on the reel, so that the next time you're letting bait out after your strike, you just kind of go back to that same area, find out where those fish are in the water column, and just dial in on them. So that's a reason why line counters have become popular. They've become popular in the salt water, and that's a problem because the salt water tends to clog those mechanisms, because there are openings there, and they get in there, the micro sands and the dried salts and like, and they do become problematic in terms of breaking off over time. And you can see that it's right on the front of the reel. Your line's coming in from the pole, it's shedding the water that was in there, and here you have a button right on the front end of this that's the reset button, which has a hole in the case, and it works its way in there. And that's one of the reasons why these things tend to fail from time to time. This one's working, that's all good, and hopefully it continues to work for a long time to come. But those line counters, the benefits of those line counters come at a cost, and that cost is usually that they do break. I'm just removing that little grip, that little set that is used to hold the handle nut on. And while we're removing these external pieces and parts, I want to take a moment to thank our first responders, essential personnel, and everybody who's keeping us safe during this pandemic. Whether you're in law enforcement or an EMT or fire, or you're working in the distribution business trying to bring all of the goods in the supply chain forward, thank you. Thank you to the teachers as well. They're kind of unsung heroes as well, as they work every day trying to keep students on some sense of a regular pattern of activities, and trying to keep them learning, some of them remote, some of them in class, and it's definitely a challenge all around, so thank you. All right, we've taken off the handle. I put my pieces and parts into a parts tray, that way I know where to find them when I go to reinstall. Some of the bigger parts, like that handle, I'm going to lay up top here. This has got what I call a rocket spring to it. It's a click mechanism. It's a spring and a little ball stud on them. I'm not a fan of them because they're a little bit difficult to put back in. So be aware of that when you're taking this reel off. You don't want to lose that. All right, there's a little shim washer that goes between the handle and the top. That's on this reel. There's two of them actually. So be aware of those as you go take the reel off. And I like to advise everybody to take pictures as you're removing the pieces and the parts, that way you know where they go when it's time to reinstall. And I'm taking pictures with the video. You can use a cell phone, you can use a basic camera, it doesn't matter, but take the pictures. And also, if you get stuck on something like this, you can always go out to the internet, get the schematic for the reel, and that should give you a burst diagram of that as well. We're going to continue ever so easily to take this off, because we don't want to lose that spring. And you'll see that spring, if you're not familiar with it, you'll see that spring when I take this assembly off. And we're just doing this in a counterclockwise manner. And I call it the rocket spring because it tends to want to shoot. Now right now it's trapped under this washer, so I'm just going to keep my hand there, so if it does shoot, it doesn't go anywhere beyond my finger. And here's that little guy sitting right there. You can probably see it now up close and personal. It's just a tip of a piece. So easy to lose, right? I'm just going to put that on a piece of paper so that you can see that. So easy to lose. And actually, from time to time, I get people calling, sending me a note and saying, where does this part go? Because it's shot out. They didn't realize it shot out, and they didn't realize how to reinstall. All right. Below that, we have two tension washers, or bell washers, or cup washers. Call them what you want. They're not flat washers. They can be seated face to face with a gap on the outside. That's going to give you some variability in your drag tension. Go face to face where the gap is on the inside. That's going to give you some lesser variability. And the least variability of all is when you put the 2 cup washers together. So use that to give you some additional sensitivity in terms of the adjustment rates in this. All right, we've got the scary part out of the way. There's 4 side plate screws, so we're going to go ahead and take those off. These are Phillips head screws. And I know I mentioned almost all of my videos when I'm taking the side plate off, I do like to take the screws from the side plate and lay them on my desk. And Shimano is one of these manufacturers where side plate screw sizes differ. So I notice the lengths, and if any one of them is different, then I know where to put that different one when it comes to reinstalling. In this case, they look like they're the same, but just in case, we got one more here. So let's go make do with that. Those 4 are the same, so now I'm going to remove those. I'm going to just put them in a little corner of my tray so that when I go to reinstall, I can pick them up. All right, we should be able to just pull this out now. And I guess we're not. I guess those 2 screws here, which hold the assembly onto the bridge, have to come off. So let's get those out of the way. Every one of these is a little bit different. And every one of these is a challenge. All right, so that second one comes off. Now the side plate should come off. I'm going to put those with the other pieces. There we go. So this one has the bridge that's mounted into, I just noticed 2 shim washers came off when we went to take that off. They will sit on the top of this assembly here. So those are going to go in there as well. Then we have our little gear sleeve. That gear sleeve has notches on it. That's the 3rd one. So there's 3 of those little washers. Then this gear sleeve has the notches. Note that the notches go down and you look at your main gear. And the rest of this is just be the anti-reverse. Yep, that's the anti-reverse sitting there. Okay, this reel has a main gear assembly and it has a backup anti-reverse gear here. We should be able to get the main gear off just by pulling up. There's dirt on that click washer and there's some dried grease, so that's what we want to take care of next. I'm going to remove that anti-reverse. I just got a question earlier in the day. Someone left it in the comment section. Oops, I'm going to get these out of the way. These things shoot. Those are yoke springs. Just got a question earlier. Somebody had a Daiwa reel and couldn't quite get this anti-reverse done. So if you're watching, this is kind of how the older style anti-reverses work. Notice you have a little hold down in the screw. Now this assembly should pick out. A little difficult. I'm going to use a screwdriver to just provide the leverage from behind. There you go. So don't force anything when you're doing the work like this. If you find out that it's not coming along easily, don't go apply pressure, right? You'll only get yourself in trouble. So we mentioned we want to clean this. This piece comes off. Notice the orientation on it. And then go ahead and get yourself something to clean it with. I go through a lot of paper towels here. Chris will tell me I don't go through enough of them. That I tend to overuse them. That's okay. Let's get the old grease off of that. Notice on this one that there's a stud. The stud goes into down position. On the anti-reverse dog, this is a backup because you already have an anti-reverse in the case here. This is a backup. It has tines on this. There's 2 separate wings. We said that's the bottom, right, with the stud. And we noticed the orientation when we took it off. So you want to separate those 2 tines like that. And then you know you're good when you see that the beak of that anti-reverse is lodged in that section. If you put it the other way, it won't lodge. I was just going to show you if you got to do it this way, which is wrong. You'll notice there's nowhere for that to catch. So that's kind of a clue. Downside, flip side. And that's properly set there. Okay, we're going to just go ahead and put that on the table for a moment. The rest of this case is clean here, so I'm just going to take that towel to clean off any residual grease that may be on that shaft. And I'm just going to use some penetrating oil, because it looks like some of the grease is kind of slipped along the side here. Let's just go clean that up. I want to remove the yoke assembly with the spool gear and just make sure we're nice and clean all about there, which we are. Alright, I'm going to take the assembly with the anti-reverse because I have that little piece on my desk and I don't want to get lost too quickly. This is a little bit of an orientation issue here. You want to get your anti-reverse over the stud, and then you need to get the square of that in there. That's set in properly. Next up then is to get this little hold down resting on that little piece there. Not necessarily easy to do here. I'm trying to do it for the camera. I wouldn't necessarily do it this way, but there's a lot of folks that get trapped with something like this, and therefore I try to do it for the camera, which is maybe not the easiest way to do it. Alright, and I've got my screw here, and I'm going to put a dab of grease on there to hold that screw, so that as I show you, I kind of get it lined up properly. That's a little trick to hold the screw when the screw is not magnetic. And we'll just get that lined up with this, and we can go ahead and put that on. Okay, we took the pinion gear out. Let's go service that. Sometimes people call it the spool gear. That's fine. Notice that there's a slot on one side of the gear that goes towards the spool. You want to grab the shoulder here. Get the grease on both sides of it. You want to check the gear to make sure that all of the teeth are clean. In this case, they're devoid of grease, so it's just been a while since it's been serviced. I guess any grease that may have been in the reel we saw off to the side there. Let's get a good dose of grease onto the gap here, which is where it's going to ride on the shoulder and the teeth. And then let's go just slip that right back over the spool and back over the carrier and seat it in like that. Let's check those washers. These are usually Carbon-Tex washers, and you usually don't need to do much with them if you do anything with them other than make sure that the assembly is clean. We've got the dirt on the back. We'll get that cleaned off. These washers look fine. Just going to clean the old grease off. So what we have there now is we have tarnish, and there's nothing that this interfaces with, so we can just live with the tarnish. You don't have to worry about that. Again, we see that it's time for a tune-up. There's no grease in those channels. If there was, go ahead and use a brush, like a wire brush or a toothbrush or something to clean that off. In this case, just want to make sure that if there's any old grease in the cavities and that they're taken care of. We know that this is the top washer. We know that this is the bottom washer. And we know that this is the back washer. So before I go anywhere, I'm going to just take that back washer, put that on there. And you can see that's smaller so that anti-reverse gear clears that. Again, these are Carbon-Tex. They don't need any grease on them. Let's just go ahead and grease up the main gear. Just like that. We can go reseat this. And then we have another washer left here. All three of these are the same, so they don't matter which goes in where. But the first one up is the round one without the indentation. It has that same kind of wing to it, but you'll notice on this one that there is a raised pillar to it. That's going to be the top washer. All right, this one goes in next. Then the second of the drag washers go in. Then what's called the eared washer goes in next, and they fit in the slots in the main gear. Then you have your top washer. And then there's a raised pillar on this. Make sure that the raised pillar goes up. And then we can grab the little ferrule and make sure that the studs are into the grooves in that. All right, there's only two pieces left here. Those are the screws that go on the yoke. A little bit of grease onto the internals here where it's going to slide. I like the oils too. I'm going to use product that Dennis from North Carolina just sent in. It's called Lucas fishing reel oil. He asked me to give it a try, see how we do. So I'm going to just put a couple of drops on here. We'll report back to him. Kind of like the applicator on this one. Okay, almost time to close it up. I did take that bearing out, so I want to make sure that I put that bearing back in. Two of these little copper washers are going to go in on top of the bearing sleeve there. Just like that. And then we can take our case with the bearing in the side plate here. We need to match that so that the hole on the eccentric gear, the stud here, and the hole in the jack match up. So this takes a little bit of play, but just be patient and you generally can get this to work. So let's just line that up. I want to keep that bearing kind of seated in there as I work through that. And then we just need to hold the pressure on and kind of just work that eccentric lever. You should get a match. There we go. I think we just got it there. There you go with the snap. All right, that's how you set that up. We're going to go into our tray here. You notice I'm working without my glove now. I stopped for a moment there. It was an opportune time before we got reinstalled. And this gets a little tricky with that silly or click mechanism thing that I call a rocket spring. So I figure I might as well take my glove off at that point so that we can work through that. Okay, got those two on. There's two more. Notice I'm going in a northeast, southwest kind of a pattern. I like to keep equal torsion or tension on there. Then I'm going to come back. I'll put those two screws into the bridge. Those are the smaller ones that are different. And then we'll see if we can do this without losing that little piece of rocket propelled click mechanism. I'll show you how the factory recommends setting it. Okay. Now, with any luck, we should be in free spool there. Yep. Very good. Alrighty, we have two more screws. I'm going to go into my parts tray to get for that. Those are going to hold the bridge plate in position. That's the ones that's going through the two studs on that yoke that have the springs on them. One on the other side here. Okay, then we'll put those two more small shim washers on here for the other side of the bearing. And if you had any questions, there's a lot of little small pieces and parts here. If you had any questions about the sequence that you're installing in, this is a good place to go back and reference your pictures that you've taken so that you make sure that you get this right. All right, we had those two bell washers. I'm going to set them face to face. That's kind of like the medium piece for the sensitivity. And now for the part that everybody dreads, at least I dread, It's this crazy little rocket spring here. I'll show you how the factory recommends that you set it. There's two ways. One of them is with putting this spring-loaded device in here and trapping it with the top washer, which is what the factory recommends. The other way is to hold that spring compressed with a toothpick through the hole in the top. And I don't like either way. I kind of get a little nervous both ways. So deep breath. Get my star adjuster out. We're going to bring the round washer, which was the top washer. I'm going to kind of just work it around. You need to compress the spring, which is always dangerous. Okay, once you have it trapped, kind of work fast, be careful, and just get your star adjuster ever so gently. In this case, I'm spinning the shaft underneath, so I'm going to see if I can't hold it with that. And then when the bottom of that star adjuster hits that washer that's got it trapped, it's going to push it in, and I'm going to release that spring. There we go. You can hear clicking. Success. Please. Now I can breathe again. All right. Two little washers that go between the star adjuster and the handle. Nut cap. And we'll go over and take care of the spool side. You'll notice that the spool did not come out from the bridge side, as the bridge was built into the reel. Okay, then you need to align your hold down with the hole. Almost got it. Sometimes you can turn this with that little cap on there, which makes it easier. One more. There we go. A hold down screw. And then my parts tray is empty, which says that for rebuilding this side of the reel, we've got it done. And as I mentioned, we'll come over to the other side. There's two more things we want to do. We want to oil the line guide, and we want to just check our spool. Let's make sure that this works smoothly and easily. Boy, it sure does. I'm just noticing I didn't tighten that screw all the way. Okay. That works beautifully. Make sure we're in free spool when we release. That means that the stud is in that jack. And just tighten down our drag washers. Yep, so we're holding. Okay, that side of the reel is done then. So what we want to do next then is we want to get this side off. And I think we can leave this on, as I believe this is kind of a C-cap. I'm not quite sure. But if you don't need to mess with the line counter mechanism, which is only 2 plastic gears, then my recommendation is don't mess with it. All right. You can see the salt as it accumulates in the channels with these screws, and that's the fear always in terms of using a line counter reel in the saltwater environment, is that salt gets into that mechanism. Eventually it just clogs it, and eventually one of those plastic pieces just snaps. But that's not always the case, but it does happen. All right, let's see if we can get this off. I'm thinking that we should be able to do that. There we go, we can. And you can see that there's all kinds of little gearing going on back here, but the one that's important, all of these are plastic, they do not need to be lubricated. The ones that is important is that back bearing. So I'm going to go ahead and use that that oil that Dennis sent in again. I like that little spout. It's kind of targeted. Get that all oiled up there. I'm going to pull the spool out here, as much as I hate this line that comes along with it, because there's a bearing on this side of the spool and you want to do the same thing. You want to oil that. Now I suppose you could have oiled that when you had the spool gear off or the pinion gear off on the other side. I like to just take it out. I like to make a visual in there. I want to make sure that if there's any dry grease in there, that gets addressed, and that overall that we've done the service properly. All right, I'm going to put that in, and chances are, as always, that line is going to get trapped in there. Almost always does. And again, Rich, I'm going to apologize, but you're going to have to restring this because this it's just making a mess of itself with that leader. Oh, still have a little bit hung up in there. There we go. All right. So we'll reset on that. You should change this anyway, it's end of season. We can just reinstall on this, and then we'll just go over and just trying to mesh these gears in here. Okay, once you have that seated, go ahead and put those screws back in. And the only thing we have left then is to oil that line guide pawl, and this one will be ready to go fishing again. So if you've enjoyed a video like this and you want to see more, please subscribe, and if you do subscribe, please hit notifications. That way you'll see all of the various reels that I am servicing, and I try to service a lot of them that come into my shop. I like to show my customers how their reels were serviced, and I like to show those that may own a reel like this how to do it yourself. So if you hit that notification button, you'll see all the reels that I'm posting. I post frequently. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section. That way I can try and answer them for you if I know the answer. Okay, just tighten that last one down. All right, there you go. That's the Shimano Tekota 500 LC with a line counter on it, and beautiful reel ready to go fishing again. So please stay safe, stay healthy, stay watching, get ready for fishing. It's coming sooner rather than later in terms of the season's opening up in the near future. Make sure all of your tackle is well maintained, and make sure that you're being safe and vigilant during the pandemic. Again, if you're a first responder, thank you for all you do. For the rest of us, it's our job just to kind of do what we've been asked to do. Wear those masks, maintain that distance, get your vaccines if available and when available, and practice that social distancing. So with that, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.